Yeah, because we are live, so we can.
Yes, perfect. We can start.
All right.
Yes, Nuja.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first live session on constitution and environmental governance. I have two requests. One is I would request each one of you to switch on your video because I think transparency is it's an integral part of good governance. So I think we should all be transparent here. So I would request each one of you to turn on your video. And since this is going to be a live session, I expect each one of you to be interactive because I'm sure you have meticulously followed all our recorded videos. So it's better if we can have some sort of interaction here in the session. So today, I'll be dealing with the progress that is made for development of environmental governance. And I will also like to bring a hint or a sense of constitution in our discussion. My colleague Vikas will be dealing with environmental rule of law. So to start with the presentation, I would first like to delve into the historical aspect because I believe we must all know how the progress towards environmental governance began. So it was 25 years after independence when Srimati Indira Gandhi had visited UN conference, which was on human development and environment in Stockholm. So it was basically in the year 1972, after which there was establishment of Central Pollution Control Board. It was followed by development of State Pollution Control Board. We had a proper environmental department in the year 1980, and even Water Act, Air Act, Environmental Protection Act 1986, Forest Conservation Act. This all began after the discussions that happened in Stockholm Conference in the year 1972. So I think India began to progress by coming up with environmental legislations. And in fact, in the year 1986, environmental impact assessment was undertaken in 32 sectors, in 32 hazardous sectors, I would say. A lot of public interest litigations have been filed, and I think Supreme Courts and High Courts have done justice to whatever was filed. So this is how a start was given towards environmental governance by coming up with different legislations and by following conventions and treaties, international conventions and treaties. So I believe the concept that is on debate right now, especially when it comes to economic development, and it has been a subject of debate right now, is sustainable development. So my question to you all is, what is sustainable development? What are sustainable development goals? Because we have been emphasizing a lot on it and we strive to achieve it by 2030. So what are sustainable development goals? Anyone? You can type it in the chat box. You can unmute yourself and answer. It's your choice.
There are 21 sustainable developmental goals that have been decided. Some of them involve removing the poverty or women empowerment, then caring for environment. These are some of them. I don't remember each one of them, but in total
we have 17 sustainable goals, and there are many that are focusing on environmental law. It's life on land, life underwater, clean environment, clean water, conservation, energy conservation. These are certain sustainable goals that we strive to achieve by 2030. Also, if you take a look at UN conference that happened on environment and development, it is also known as Earth Summit that happened in the year 1992. They had adopted a principle which is also known as Agenda 21. So this Agenda 21 had basically emphasized a lot on removing poverty, giving clean environment and natural resources to the public at large. They had also mentioned a lot about mitigating climate change problems. So a lot was emphasized. So basically, they were trying to bring in international law on sustainable development. And there have been Millennium Development Goals also that are focusing a lot on environmental protection and removing poverty. So if we look at the international conventions and the summits that happen, UN conferences that happen, they have been constantly emphasizing on environmental protection, preservation, and improving the quality of natural resources that we have. And I think global warming and climate change are the most contemporary issues. They are talked about. There are a lot of debates going on, and I think it is also one of the most complicated issue right now. So let us take an example of global warming and climate change, and let us see how developments have taken place in that area. So again, if we look at the international framework, a lot of concerns were raised in Earth Summit. And as I've already mentioned, that Agenda 21 emphasized a lot on environmental protection and conservation. So keeping that in mind, Kyoto Protocol came into picture. It was adopted in the year 1997. And it was implemented in the year 2005 because there were many ratification issues that were going on. So we had Kyoto Protocol, and the basic objective of Kyoto Protocol was to control net emission of carbon dioxide gases. So they wanted to stabilize greenhouse emissions that were happening and also focus more on the sustainable development. So basically, yeah, we do understand the meaning of development, sustainable development. This definition was in fact laid down in one of the conventions that was held, that a sustainable development is nothing but economic development in a way that you are satisfying the needs of the present generation without harming the future generation's needs. Precisely what you have stated in the chat box. Thank you so much, Ms. Aradhya. So let us continue with the climate change that I was talking about. So Kyoto Protocol was established, and it tried to cover all the industrial countries, I mean, from where the emissions were coming out. And then I think Paris Agreement is also one such development that happened in the year 2016, and they had objective, they wanted to achieve that objective by 2020. So I want to ask a question to you. Do we have a proper environmental law legislation in India? Do we have a legislation for climate change? Yes, Vaishnika, Miss Vaishnika, do we have a proper legislation on climate change in India?
No, ma'am. According to Kyoto Protocol, India is a member of it, ma'am.
Correct.
But we don't have any legislation. But we have Environment Protection Act 1986 on it, ma'am.
Yes, Environmental Protection Act is the umbrella legislation that we have. But is there any specific legislation on climate change? So the
No,
answer to yes. Do we have a climate change policy? Because policy is different from legislation.
India is only a member in a Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement 2015, ma'am.
Ma'am, those are international protocols that we have. India is a party to it, but I'm talking about national policy. Do we have any national policy?
I don't have any idea about it.
Okay, so we have National Action Plan. I'm sure you all must have heard of it. So we do have a national policy, and which was revised in the year 2022. We have national action plans under which we have national core missions also under the national action plans. We have state action plans, but however, we don't have a specific legislation for climate change. And that is something that we need to emphasize on, because if we do not have a proper legislation, it's very difficult to make it enforceable in the court of law. So just to give that legitimate effect to it, we need a proper legislation, which I think India needs to work upon, because we have several acts. We have Water Act, Air Act, Environmental Protection Act, which somehow tries to cover a gist of climate change, but we do not have a specific legislation on climate change. So I think that is the need of the hour right now. And policymakers should definitely focus on coming up with the legislation. So this was about the climate change progress that has happened after Kyoto. We had Paris, and still we are unable to mitigate the issues of emissions, hazardous gases that are coming out of industries, and which is ultimately polluting the environment, and ultimately that has resulted into climate change issues. So when we talk about the Constitution of India, environmental provisions are definitely compressed in the Constitution of India, but I would again say that this is the result of discussions that happened in Stockholm Conference in the year 1972. A lot of suggestions were provided in that discussion, And it was clearly stated that each and every country should take measures and should try to come up with legislations and enactment which can actually provide protection to environment. So keeping this in mind, Constitution has also embedded, you can take a look at Article 48A of the Indian Constitution. So what does Article 48A talk about? It's a very famous article, and it's again related to environmental protection. So I would like to ask each one of you, what does it state? Article 48A, anyone? I think Mr. Vaisak is trying to connect, but he's unable to connect with the audio. All right, so Article 48A clearly talks about the duty of the state to endeavor to protect and to improve the quality of environment along with wildlife and forests. And Article 51AG emphasizes on the duty of every citizen to take care of natural resources, including forests, wildlife, and other natural resources that are in the environment. So I think Article 48A and Article 51AG are the two major articles that are mentioned in the Constitution of India. One is focusing on the duty of the state to protect environment, and the other is focusing on duty of every citizen to protect the environment. And I think together they come up with a very nice environmental constitutional jurisprudence, which is emphasizing on the rights and duties. Also, if you take a look at Article 253, it talks about the power of the parliament to make laws for the entire nation or for any part of the state with respect to an agreement, convention, or an international treaty. And I think this has very well been implemented, because if you take a look at Water Act, Air Act, is nothing but the suggestions that were laid down in the Stockholm Declaration, and considering that India actually decided to cover it up in the Constitution. So I think these are the major provisions of Constitution that are emphasizing a lot on environmental protection. Other than that, I think India has made significant progress when it comes to waste management laws. You might have seen there were a lot of amendments on solid waste management rules, plastic waste management rules, hazardous waste management rules. So talking about plastic waste management rules, I'm sure you all must be aware, because this is a contemporary issue, and government also has been emphasizing a lot on it, that we must ban single-use plastic. And government has also passed a notification that we have to increase the microns from 75 microns to 120 microns. So has it already been implemented? Have you ever asked the shopkeeper that how many microns are there in the particular plastic bag? If at all they are giving you products in the plastic bag, have shopkeepers already replaced plastic bags with paper bags or jute bags? What is your opinion on it?
Yeah, some places they have. I've seen many, even these e-commerce websites, they have started wrapping up the products in paper or some thick quality material rather than using plastic. So yeah, it has been already, the rule has been passed by CPCB, and at many of places I can see the plastic is being replaced by some alternative material.
So have you asked the shopkeeper that what are the microns in this plastic bag? Because I remember when I conducted a survey probably 8 months back, and when I asked 30 to 35 shopkeepers, they were not even aware about the rule, and they were still using plastic bags having 50 microns, which is again very, very harmful. Do you think laws are being implemented?
Ma'am, though they, in my opinion, they are aware that the plastic is being banned, but this micron and the thickness, they might not be into so much of technical knowledge like this. But yeah, some of them, they are aware that plastic is now being banned.
Correct. All right. And Mr. DB Prabhu, would you like to intervene? Would you like to share?
Yeah, I was just about to say that laws are there, a lot of laws are very good laws are there, but the implementation is a problem.
Correct.
Because the necessary infrastructure to be able to put that law into action is not present.
Correct. I absolutely, because see, if you take a look at US, there are policies, there are a lot of rules, but I think implementation part is very strong, and India is lagging behind when it comes to implementation of rules and regulations, especially when we talk about the duties of citizens. I think on behalf of citizens also, there is a lot of issue. They are not trying to implement it in a proper way, and that has really raised a lot of issues when it comes to environmental protection. Other than this, authorities have also implemented extended producer's responsibility. So what do you understand by extended producer responsibility? Anyone?
Yeah,
What is the
producers,
basic idea behind this concept?
is the basic idea is producer pays. So, but of course, it's not related to pay. It's the producer of a particular good which is hazardous from a consumption perspective or from a disposal perspective, it has to be recycled properly.
Correct.
So the producer has to own the responsibility of the last mile of recycling.
Correct.
So that's
So
the
a very significant responsibility is actually placed on the heads of companies and producers who are bringing those products to the markets. So precisely what you said, recycling is the best option. And you might have heard H&M, which is one of the famous clothing brand, is following this policy for a very long time now. Even L'Oreal company, which is a skincare and cosmetic company, has been following this. So basically in USA also, if you see, this is a very common concept. They basically lease jeans and other clothing materials. So they provide you for a year, you use it, and then you give it back, and in return you'll get a new pair of jeans. So this is the entire process that they've been following, and this is extended producers' responsibility, where they have a significant responsibility to make sure that either they come up with treatment mechanisms or they conduct recycling and reusage of those products. So this is something that has been implemented in India, and India is one of the major countries who have implemented this, because if we compare it with European nations, I think India has made a significant progress. So this is one aspect that has been implemented. As you said, polluters pay principle and precautionary principle is something which is applicable to the industries right now. When you talk about precautionary principle, it means that industries have to anticipate the loss which can occur because of their hazardous activities. So the onus of proof is always on the head of industries. Industries have to prove that they took enough measures to make sure that the emissions are not released, but somehow they couldn't. So precautionary principle is one thing, and polluters pay principle again is making good the loss that has been incurred. So if you have caused damage to the other party, you have to make sure that you compensate, you pay damages. Though you have taken enough precautions and enough measures, it is your responsibility to make good the loss. So precautionary principle and polluters pay principle are the two principles that are significantly applied to all the industries in India. Other than that, if you talk about penalties, I think in India, penalties are quite strict. If you take a look at Environmental Protection Act, it clearly states that penalty will be provided for 5 years, or there will be a fine of 1 lakh rupees or both. This penalty is quite greater if you compare it with USA. So in terms of penalties also, India has made a significant progress. CSR. So what is CSR? What is corporate social responsibility? Anyone?
Companies who have to give a certain proportion of their profits for social causes like education, environment, healthcare, etc.
So under which act has corporate social responsibility been defined? Is there a particular rule? Is there a particular law that has defined corporate social responsibility?
Yes, there is a law, but there is but I don't remember the number.
So we have corporate social responsibility policy rules 2014, and also if you know Companies Act 2013. They both talk about corporate social responsibility. So is everyone supposed to contribute? Is everyone supposed to undertake CSR activity, or is there a proper rule for the industries or companies?
There is a rule based on turnover, and there's a criteria for that.
Correct. So what is the amount of that turnover? Any idea?
I'm not sure about it.
So the act says that if the company's net worth is 500 crores, please note down, if the company's net worth is 500 crores, or if the turnover is 1000 crore, or if the net profit is 5 crores, then that company has to contribute. Sorry?
Please a bit slow. Kindly repeat it.
Yeah. If the company's net worth is 500 crores, or if the turnover is 1,000 crores, or if the net profit is 5 crore, then a company has to spend at least 2% of the average net profit on the CSR activities. This is the rule that has been laid down under Corporate Social Responsibility Policy Act 2014 and Companies Act 2013. So this is the criteria which is making it mandatory for companies to contribute for the CSR activities. Have you heard of National Mission for Clean Ganga? Anyone?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't remember the pillars exactly. Maybe there are certain
Do you
pillars
have
under
any idea how much amount is spent for this mission? You might have heard of Namami Yojana.
Yes,
Any
ma'am.
idea? Yes. How much amount is spent for this Yojana?
I have read about it. I don't remember. Maybe around 20,000 crore. Is it the?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, friends, 20,000 crores have been spent on this particular Yojana. Other than that, for this mission, there are two phases. For the first phase, we have received more than 4,000 crores from World Bank. And for the second phase also, we will be receiving 3,000 crores. So I think so much amount has been spent for National Mission for Clean Ganga. So what is the progress? Is Ganga actually clean?
There are always leakages, ma'am.
Have we actually succeeded? Because we have spent so much amount. Have we actually succeeded with it?
No, ma'am.
I won't say completely no, because last time I had a chance to see both the Ganga and the Yamuna. I found that they were much better than they were 10 years back.
Correct.
So it is, of course, it is the goal is not 100% achieved, but significant progress has been done.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree.
It's also,
there is a significant progress, but yeah, we are yet to achieve the goal exactly.
It's precisely because we have extended our hand to a lot of international countries. If you would know, Germany recently had a meeting with our Indian ambassador, and they have agreed to provide 900 crores for this mission. Other than that, they have agreed to provide 100 crores to the state of Uttarakhand. And if you visit Uttarakhand now, you'll notice that difference in Ganga, and the way they have tried to clean, the way they have tried to remove emissions is really remarkable. So my point is that a lot of money is being spent. So when it comes to National Mission for Ganga, does it fall under CSR activity? Are companies responsible to contribute for this particular project? Is it mandatory for companies to contribute for this project as a CSR activity?
They should, because they are the major sources of pollution in River Ganga. I guess they should be contributing.
So is it only for the private companies, or even public authorities are responsible for it? Is it limited to private companies?
No, it's not limited to private companies.
Correct.
And apart from that, to answer your first question also, I don't think it's mandatory to, yeah, it is desired, but not mandatory.
Correct. It is not mandatory, but if you look at Schedule 7 of the Companies Act 2013, it states that it falls under the CSR responsibility, and all the persons who are belonging to India, those who are citizens of India, even those who are NRIs, those who are people of Indian origin, public and private industries, they all are invited to contribute, and it falls under the CSR responsibility. So till now, I would like to say Indian Oil Corporation Limited, Indorama Trust, and State Bank of India have actually contributed for this mission, and they are trying to come up with hydroelectric projects and other projects which can be beneficial for River Ganga. So this is all about the CSR activity. So I have already mentioned what all progression has been made till now. The best is amendment rules that have been brought in the waste management. And along with that, extended producers' responsibility is one step which is taken by the authorities, and they have actually implemented it and urged all the companies to implement the same. CSR activity is another thing which actually can play an important role. Other than that, I would like to say that, do you think making of laws when it comes to environmental protection is a transparent system? Are opinions of public taken into consideration? Is it open? Is it a transparent system, or is it a secret mission that has been undertaken?
No, I think it's it's an open system, because for all the new legislations that come up, or even new policies that come up, there are drafts which are circulated on the government websites, and people are given a chance to comment on that.
Correct. But I think there are several laws where opinions of public are not taken into consideration. We still cannot say that it is absolutely transparent because many acts are being formed. Did you know that in 2014, Subramaniam Committee was basically set up by Ministry of Environmental Law. And under that committee, certain suggestions were laid down. One of the suggestions was to come up with a new umbrella legislation. That means they wanted to replace Environmental Protection Act 1986. However, this proposal was not accepted by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Science and Technology. So this was one proposal, and however, no efforts have been made, and we are hopeful that we'll see the fruit of their efforts very soon. But this was the suggestion that was laid down, and also it was laid down by the Standing Committee that whatever laws are being framed, especially when it comes to environmental protection, is not at all a transparent system, because many a times opinion of public is not taken into consideration and it is not open. A very intersectional issue, and I think if you really want proper environmentalism, if you want success in this particular area, it's very important that voice of people is taken into consideration, especially those who are unheard. So I would like to ask, what if tomorrow there is a new umbrella legislation, and what if they decide to mitigate the Environmental Protection Act 1986? Will it be an opportunity for each one of us, or will it be an operation for us? What is your suggestion?
Ideally, it should be an opportunity to set right a lot of things, a lot of loopholes which are there even in the EPR laws. So all those things which are already experienced, we can probably plug those loopholes, and it's a great opportunity for all of us.
So what do you think are the loopholes in EPR, Environmental Protection Act?
Okay, I won't be able to comment on all the aspects of EPR, but especially when it comes to certain things like e-waste and plastics and products, basically, but there is no way of ensuring that there is no pilferage in the law, because what is currently it is all being done on a paper trail, and papers are very easy to forge. So there is no way of protecting that. So something like technology will be able to bring in a lot of transparency in such kind of processes. For example, if it is a blockchain-based form, then things could there could be a lot of changes. Or everything comes with a QR code, and the QR code becomes a tracking mechanism. Those kind of technology interventions will also be required to make these environmental laws successful.
So basically, you are saying that there has to be a proper balance between environmental law and development. We need to form that balance because you want to bring in a lot of technology and you want to make it easier, but at the same time, it has to be environmental friendly. So basically, you are trying to emphasize on what I clearly said. You are trying to maintain environmental developmental jurisprudence. That is what you are trying to say. So I believe we need a lot of effective regulatory institutions. We need appropriate compliance mechanisms, because I think that is extremely important. Compliance implementation is the need of the hour that needs to be done no matter what. There has to be a lot of transparency in formulating laws, because we know the upper side, the outer side, but somehow we are not being involved in it. So there is a need for a lot of transparency. And since we are focusing on the governance, as I clearly said, that transparency is the key. So I think these are certain things which we need to consider, and is also the need of the hour. So today I have only emphasized on the steps that were taken by India, especially towards environmental governance. I didn't delve into the technicalities of the Act because I believe it's been only 4 weeks and you have not learned much about Environmental Protection Act and other legislations that we have. So we will definitely delve into the important Supreme Court judgments, because I think when it comes to environmental law and constitution, I think we have the best judgments on every act, be it Water Act, Air Act. So we'll be definitely delving into those judgments and technicalities of the act. But for today, this was just an introduction on how India has made effort towards achieving environmental governance and how has constitution played an important role by taking in Article 48A and 51 AG. My last point is, when I talk about Article 48A, it is a directive principle of state policy. What do you understand by directive principle of state policy? Is it equivalent to a fundamental right? Or is it analogous to fundamental right? What is the difference between a fundamental right and directive principle of state policy?
Ma'am?
Yes.
Ma'am, fundamental right is a right for citizens of India, ma'am. Directive policy states the duties, which is not obligation to the state, but a state have to follow in order to secure people's majority.
Okay. I would say the basic difference between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy is the nature of one being justiciable in nature and the other being non-justiciable in nature. So when I say non-justiciable in nature, what does it mean? Is it enforceable in the court of law?
For justiciable, we can approach the court of law. For non-justiciable, we can't, ma'am. Fundamental rights is justiciable in nature, and directive principles of state policy is non-justiciable, ma'am.
Non-justiciable in nature,
not
absolutely. Correct.
It is for the state executives and legislators to be followed if they like, and that is not mandatory, ma'am. In order to secure people's support, they have to follow. That is the thing. The Constitution makes us follow the directive principles of state policy, ma'am.
So I think directive principles of state policy, though they are not justiciable in nature, they are extremely important, and state and the center has to take it into consideration. If you look at some of the landmark judgments of the Supreme Court, you will be able to demarcate. Sir.
Anuja, just on that point, it's a very good discussion that you are initiating. And I just wanted to bring this point out that, ladies and gentlemen, please remember, you have Article 21 that probably gives you the right to environment, which says that yes, there is a right to clean and healthy environment, to clean drinking water. But no right is exclusive without the duty that supports the right. So to be honest, even if you want to exercise or make the right justiciable, finding a duty and an obligation to fulfill that right becomes very, very critical. And when you look at Article 48A of the Constitution of India, that was brought about in the year 1972, you will notice that this was very critical in imposing the obligations of the state. Please note, if a public interest litigation is filed in the field of environmental law, saying that the state must protect environment, it is a duty of the state to protect the environment in the Constitution. The state policy must be directed towards ecocentrism. It must protect environment, consciousness of environment, protection of nature, Mother Earth must be a priority. Wherever the state fails, my right commences. And that's how a public interest litigation stands. So to say that yes, directive principles of state policy are not, but in the field of environmental law, you have to evaluate it slightly differently, because it is the imposition of that duty. It is holding the state to its own responsibility and accountability under the Constitution of India. And wherever the state fails, the citizens get their right. And that's how the right to environment is exercised. And also, don't forget, wherever the state fails in its duty to say balance between development and environment, sustainable development, taking just development, not taking care of the environment while doing development, right? The citizens' rights get adversely affected because none of us want pure development. We want environment and development. So the concept of sustainable development, intra-generation, intergeneration, within the same generation and for the future generation. State policies cannot adversely affect the rights of the future generation by any developmental decision or any developmental project. They have to take care of the future generation while taking care of the current generation through their state policies. And can I force and hold the state accountable? Yes, I can, because that is a duty casted in the Constitution. And it is my right to hold the state accountable, to hold the state answerable to the call of the duty that the Constitution inscribes. Anuja, please come.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. So I think sir has very well answered this question. And this was actually my last point of discussion, because I just wanted you to know the difference between fundamental right and directive principles of state policy and how is it being balanced. Because even if you look at the Constitution of India, there are many judgments, especially I would like to quote Minerva Mills versus Union of India. This is one of the landmark judgments where Supreme Court had clearly stated that you should not consider fundamental rights ahead of directive principles of state policy, because though they are non-justiciable in nature, you have to understand that they are extremely important, and state and center has to take it into consideration whenever they are drafting a new law or whenever the Supreme Court or High Court is passing a judgment. So there has to be a proper balance between the two. So that's it for the progress on environmental governance and Constitution of India, intervention of Constitution for protecting environment. So now I would request my colleague Vikas to take up discussion on environmental rule of law. Thank you so much. If you have queries, you can write it in the chat box. I'll be very much available, but now I would request Vikas to take up the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anuja. So, friends, before I start, I wanted to show, 1 second. Friends, before I start, I wanted to show our websites. We have 3 websites that that were typed in the chat box. One of them is sirapub.nls.ac.in. We have books and we have journal also that work, that we publish regularly in the field of environmental law. You can refer to our websites and articles. For example, if you recall, in 2020, there was a LG polymer gas leak case that has happened. We have dealt with that case in good detail. And if you want to know the legal perspectives of that case, you can refer to our websites too. And very recently, we have also drafted a bill called the Climate Protection Bill 2021, which you can also refer to and learn from it. Friends, with that, I will start my presentation. Just give me 1 second. Sir or Ms. Anuja, if they want to add some points to it.
No, Vikas, I think we have already mentioned about it in the chat box, and they can always visit, cira.pub.nls.ac.in.
Yes. So friends, today the topic of our discussion in this time that we have left is environmental rule of law. Have how many of you have heard this term before? Environmental rule of law, a unique, a very interesting combination of 4 words. that aims to integrate two important concepts. First is environmental law, and second one is rule of law. Let me begin by asking you one simple question, friends. Have you heard of this term called rule of law? How many of you have heard of this? Rule of law.
No, sir, I haven't heard of this
You
term.
haven't heard of it? Wow. Seriously.
So I have
Yes. Okay.
By 8 days.
Yeah. Yes. David Dicey. Right. David Dicey. But what does this term means? Rule of law. What do you link with that? I'm not sure how many are you from low background and how many are not from low background. People from low background might know what are the key components of it. But the non-low background people, I want to ask you, what do you know? You do you read this term in newspapers in where somewhere? कहीं पे आपने देखा हो कि रूल ऑफ लॉ लिखा हुआ है? Okay. Does our country has rule of law? Does our constitution guarantees a rule of law society?
Yes, it does. Because I am from law background and I'm aware of it. Since
Wonderful.
Professor A.V. Dicey's rule of law propounds three principles,
Yes.
and our constitution adheres to it.
Yes. No, but evidence's principles were pronounced in 19th century. Are the principles still relevant to this day?
No, they have been criticized a lot, and there have been criticism by various philosophers. And we are now now new rule of law has been propounded, which we call as the modern rule of law, which is applicable in our country.
Excellent. Friends, when we link up this term rule of law, it is a very ancient term, not a new term. It when it came to A.V. Dicey, he explained it. The words were used this, but this concept is there since time immemorial. Starting from Aristotle, it has taken thousands of years to develop this in different parts and different pieces. So we are not going to deal with in this short time what different thinkers have set up this concept. We will link it with the environmental law. So dealing with that, friends, it is defined as a principle of governance in which all persons, institutions are, including the state, are accountable. The word that we have used before also in the previous discussion that Anu Puja was taking on, that accountability component of our institutions to law, and they are equally enforced and independently adjudicated. Now, the new component that has been incorporated in that is that the law should be in consistency with the international human rights norms, with the fundamental rights that we have. You can't have a law that violates your fundamental rights and give that law an implementation. The key components of rule of law, I want to ask you these things. First is equal accountability. Do we really have equal accountability? All of us are equally accountable, or there is a differentiation between big corporation, very any corporation, big fish, something.
Sir,
Yes.
maybe only copy.
Hello. Okay. Ignore this. And second component that the rule of law states is fair implementation of the law that have been enacted. Fair implementation means impartial implementation. You are not, doing any partiality or not doing any specific treatment to someone. They are implemented in, as we have discussed in the previous session also, in a transparent manner. Friends, lastly, consistency. The rule of law mandates that law should be consistent over a period of time. You can't keep them changing and modifying each day, right? So does this concept can be incorporated in our environmental law?
But because, just to debate with you, I
Yes,
think
yes, sir.
Rakshita said there is rule of law and she knows about it. She's from the law background.
Yes, sir.
I believe there is no rule of law. There is rule of men.
True, sir.
To be gender neutral, I can say rule of people or rule of. So where is rule of law? Is there rule of law? I doubt so. Where is the rule of law? We have men who are implementing the rule of law or the law itself, and there can be a case-to-case application of the law, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
It's not rule of law. See, law, if it's there, then why will you require judges to apply law? We can have robots, right? They can apply the law as it is. But why are judges there? Because they have to, evaluate on a case-to-case basis. Law may be there, but it has to be applied. It has to be, sometimes the objectivity of the law has to be subjectively applied, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So I think there is rule of men. It's not entirely rule of law in India. So I don't agree with Vikas saying that, in environmental law, there is equal accountability. What is equal accountability? Do you think the accountability of the industry and the accountability of the individual is one and the same? Friends, today under environmental regulations, there is the tobacco legislation. Vikas knows about it very well. Smoking in public places is an offense, punishable with a fine. And please note, the tobacco legislation, the title, I'm sure Anuja will put it in the chat box. It's a long title. The prohibition of use of tobacco in public places. Right? It is a fine. Now, I'm an individual smoker. Am I equally accountable as an industry that is actually polluting the air? Are we at the same bottom of the pyramid? Should the rule of law treat both of them equally? For a smoker, it is 500 rupees fine. For an industry, it is 500 crore fine. Is that the rule of law? Fair implementation. Where do you see fair implementation of environmental legislations? Please note, fair implementation is a challenge today because state pollution control boards are differentiatingly implementing environmental law in different states. Every state wants industries. Every state wants investment. Every state is encouraging more and manufacturing industries. So do you think every state is implementing Water Act, Air Act equally? Some states implement it much better than the other states. Don't you think so? Don't you think so? Some states, the pollution control board are, using the stick method. In most states, the pollution control board are using the carrot method. Consistency. Because I doubt what this consistency is there in environmental law. Look at the number of amendments that have taken place in environmental legislations. Are there amendments? Have there been amendments?
Yes, sir.
How many amendments? Let me tell you, friends, the CRZ notification has been overall. There is a new law. CRZ notification was in 1991. We changed that law. Solid waste law has changed. Plastic law has changed. Electronic waste law has changed. Now, please note the government wants to revamp environmental laws entirely. So consistency, where is the consistency? See, if you ask me, do you think law should be static or should law be dynamic? At least answer this. Come on, guys. Should law be static or should it be dynamic? Yeah. Ranjan, we'll answer your question. No problem. I think I will request Jai. Jai, can you answer Ranjan in the chat box and give some clarification on the basic terminologies that is used in law? But guys, others, static or dynamic? Prabhu?
It should be dynamic, I guess.
It's a difficult question to answer actually, because the moment you say dynamic, it becomes flexible. And if it is flexible, then people can twist it and turn it the way you want.
So Prabhu, I gave you a catch-22 situation. You don't know which to answer. Right? The point that I'm just trying to make, Prabhu, is, see, in environmental law, change of science, change of technology, change of standards, change of perceptions. So, for example, Prabhu, let me tell you, today one animal may be threatened. Say, let's say tiger. What is the population of tiger in India today? See, please note, when the Britishers came to India, I think we had more than 40,000 tigers, or maybe 4 lakhs, whatever is the figure. I am not sure about the figures. Today we have less than 2,000 tigers. Am I right, Prabhu? Yes. Now, if the population increases, then it is not going to be called as a threatened or endangered species, because there is sufficient population. So the law has to say, okay, we have done enough with tiger, now let us focus on elephant, or maybe focus on something else. So environmental law is dynamic, friends. It has to change. It is inevitable. Today, let me tell you, say 10 years back, what was your water quality? 10 years after that, should the water quality be the same or should it improve? Should it get you better H2O? नहीं सर, हम 10 साल का पूरा वही पानी पी लेंगे, कोई चिंता नहीं, कितना कंटामिनेटेड था वो गंगा, वही गंगा पानी नहा लेंगे, ऐसा नहीं होगा ना. Progressiveness is about increasing standards. It is increasing of compliance. It is increasing of environmental, challenges. So, what kind of consistency can we expect? So, Vikas is absolutely right. This is a very important concept. But in environmental law, do we really have rule of law? Should we even think of having the rule of law? And if so, please note what kind of rule of law. Because remember, conceptually, this point is very important, that you cannot have rule of men. Arbitrariness comes when men apply law. Yeah, you cannot have biases. You cannot have subjectivity in every aspect of environmental law. Then we'll be cherry picking. So rule of law is important. But what should be the rule of law in environment is something that we all, as environmentalists, must contribute in our thinking. Right? I think this is very important for you to consider and evaluate. Vikas, over to you.
Yes, sir. So, friends, that discussion that Sahar and me have is generally based on this premise, to answer.
Give them an idea of what happens in a courtroom, Vikas, maybe.
True, sir, true. Friends, to answer such questions, whether there is rule of law in our country or not, I will say yes, we have. Now, why do I say we have? Friends, rule of law is an abstract concept. What do you mean by abstract concept? It exists only in abstraction. It doesn't exist in reality. In reality, you will find human beings. You will see me. You will see Dhairam sir. You will see your own self. But you will not see law in reality. आपको नहीं दिखा कि अरे लो वहां है, देखो उसने आज क्या कोट पहन रखा है, is looking smart in that. It is an abstract concept that exists only in our mental mind space, and from there we develop it in the governance structure that we have based. In that governance structure, we centralized rule of law and build the structure on that part. Now, when we attempt to integrate these two concepts. So far, we have not tried to integrate. This integration started in 2013 by UNEP. Why did UNEP, the United Nations and body, came with this concept? Why was the need felt for this? Friends, as in the previous discussion also, my colleague Anuja was pointing out that we have so many laws, standards, strategies, laws and objectives and mechanism, but has the quality improved? Has they produced the desired goals that they intended to meet? With this, the United Nations thought ki nahi, something has to be done with this situation. Some new concept has to be able to make that happen. So what the United Nations did was they coined this integration. No, they coined this new term, environmental rule of law, to integrate these two terms. They found out, okay, we have so many laws and regulations, but the implementation part, when it comes to that, we lag behind in a certain degree. Friends, the components of this, I will not deal into that due to shortage of time. And the discussion that Sir was having is precisely this. Can these two concepts be merged at all? Can environmental law be perfectly merged with rule of law? As Sir has pointed out, consistency. There is a scientific uncertainty, right? Every standard and measure that you lay down cannot be 100% accurate, cannot be 100% scientifically. For example, friends, we have a rule, we have a law called coastal regulation zone. What happens in that zone? We said from the high tide line, 500 meters will be the coastal regulation zone. It's a very simple thing to understand. 500 meters from a high tide line. Difficulty comes in determining what is high tide line. High tide line है क्या? कहां से उसको मेजर कर सकते हैं? पेपर में लिखना is very simple thing, but when you go in the field, when you go into the practice, these challenges do come into picture. Nextly, as Sir has dealt with so many of these points, I will not go into the detail of it, and
we can probably open up for some questions they have with us.
So we can open up with some questions. If someone wants to ask something, you can definitely deal with it.
So my colleague Jay Patruka has already answered. Ranjan, is that Ranjan or yeah, Ranjan Pandey? Yeah, you can see the answer in the chat box. Please refer to that. It's a very, very detailed answer. I think he has explained use certain basic terminologies that we use in law. And I think this is very important if you're from a non-law background to understand the distinction between an act, a rule, a regulation, a notification. But don't forget, I don't know if Prabhu and others know this. This is in the national context. Now, please note, in the international context, you must know what a protocol is. What is a convention? What is a treaty? And finally, Prabhu, don't forget, what is an agreement? Because the most recent convention on climate change is called the Paris Agreement. Kyoto Protocol, yeah, Montreal Protocol, Stockholm Convention, Rio Declaration, CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, is a treaty, Prabhu. Treaty, right? All of these are very important because they have legal implications. So we, it's like, what is an act? What is the difference between an act and a rule? What is the rule and the regulation? So internationally also, these have some distinctions that you must be aware of. Right?
Yes, sir. I read the answer. Thank you so much for such a detailed clarification. Thank you very much.
No problem. No problem. Jay, do you want to substantiate anything?
No, sir. I think you have explained it well enough.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Any other question anyone has? Any clarification that you want? This is your time. We don't want to talk right now.
Sir, I don't have any question. I just wanted to say that this was really very nice interaction I came across, and I would love if we can do it more often, once in a week or twice in a week.
No, that I'm not sure, because that is for NPTEL to decide, but I'm sure we at least have it once in a month. We will see if we can have it regularly as well. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No,
there are a few questions that have come on the Excel sheet.
Oh, wonderful. Rohit, please.
Yes. So the first particular question, I think, is by Ms. Shweta, which says, can you state any applicable situation of the EIA, Environment Impact Assessment?
I don't really understand the question, Rohit. Applicable situation, is it?
Yes. But I think through the session, she'll be able to look at, because it's too early into the course.
Okay, so let me understand the question. I'm not sure. Maybe this is what she wants to ask. What's her name?
Shweta.
Shweta, every project requires an environmental impact assessment. So projects are divided as per category A projects, B1 and B2 projects. And you will notice that there are mandatory environmental impact assessments that have to be conducted. The report has to be prepared. A summary of the EIA report also has to be submitted so that citizens can get access to it. Now, what do these environmental impact reports contain? They contain impact on the environment from that industrial activity, to the flora, to the fauna, to the soil, to the biodiversity, to the water. What is the consumption? What is the raw material? What is going to be, the land that is going to be utilized, whether they have an expansion plan, are they in the phase 1 construction right now, what is their idea, what happens in case there is an industrial accident, how to respond, so on and so forth. So it's a very detailed report in that sense. It's a compulsory report that is then put across to a committee that is called the EIA Appraisal Committee. And they actually study this, and based on what they study, then you will get an environmental clearance. Okay, the environmental clearance will impose certain conditions before you can actually start operating your unit. Right, that is called the consent to operate. That will be granted to you, but it will all be based on the conditions, saying that if you put a parameter, a equipment, if you take care of the water and waste discharge, then only you can actually operate. That is how the EIA becomes an integral component of the decision-making process before an environmental clearance is granted to an industry to start its operation.
Right. Yes, sir. I think that was the only relevant question with regard to environment.
Sir?
So Rohit, are you saying there were too many irrelevant ones? Okay, good one. Yeah, please go ahead. Yes, who is this?
Sir, I have a doubt, sir. I am Shweta, who posted the question, sir.
Okay.
Sir, if I start an industry, in an area, whether I have to apply for EIS, sir?
No,
as a opponent of the.
Yes, you have to depend upon what is that kind of industry that you're doing. Okay, Shweta. So Shweta, we say there are 4 categorizations of industry based on their pollution load. Okay, there is a comprehensive environmental index that is being dividing industries into the following categories, Shweta. Note it down. Red category of industries. They are highly polluting. Then comes orange category of industry. Then green category, and then finally white category. Okay, depending upon which category industry you fall, the EIA reports have to be prepared, the environmental clearance have to be taken, and there is a process regarding the same. Rohit is frozen. Okay.
I think that's the last question. I think
Okay. Okay,
can
that's good.
open it for the participants to ask anything, please.
Right. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's time. So let's wind up on time. I think you will join in the next live session as well. Let me thank my colleagues Anuja, Vikas, Rohit, Jai, Aparna, and Gayatri. It's a teamwork, ladies and gentlemen. This course is entirely a teamwork. And I don't know if you know this, we as a team offer 3 courses on NPTEL platform. So thank you for joining this course. Thank you for subscribing this course, showing this much enthusiasm, being here for the live session, and asking very pertinent points and questions and interacting with us. Thank you so much. We look forward to hosting you again for the next live session. Till then, good evening, goodbye, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. Bye-bye.